At Sleep Outfitters Outlet, great sleep is a big deal. Save 40 to 60% every day on every Sealy, Stearns & Foster, and Tempur-Pedic. Queens as low as $249. Customer exchanges, closeouts, and floor samples. Inventory changes daily, so come in for your dream deal today. With no credit needed financing, expert advice, and up to 60% off retail, it's never been easier to get the sleep and savings you deserve. Go to sleepoutfittersoutlet.com for financing details and to find a store near you.
A choice right now between fear and love. It's just a ride.
Out of the dark night of ignorance and into the shining light of truth.
Expanding reality.
A population of citizens capable of critical thinking.
We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are.
There's a level of reality where everything dissolves into an ocean of energy.
We empower our experience by insisting on our authenticity.
That's very profound. Very.
Expanding reality.
Richard Rokeby, it is so cool to see you again, my friend. You came on episode 51, my friend, 2 years ago with your book, The Lights Upon the Hills, the Burton Dassett UFO event of 1923. Actually, December through February, right? December 22 through 23. I love this story. This is fascinating. You found so many awesome things that you brought to us here with the church, with the lights, with everything. And since then, you have produced an incredible new version of this where you have updated witnesses. You have a Men in Black encounter that we're going to talk about. You have all sorts of things happening in the area in which you find yourself. And it's fascinating, my friend. So you're through Flying Disc Press, which is Philip Mantle. This is Family Anyhow. So you guys know how this works, all the ways to find him and this amazing book and the update for it located down in the show description. Richard, my friend, how have you been?
I've been good, Brandon. Thank you. And thank you for having me back on. And it's great to see that the show's gone from success to success. Well deserved as well.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Yes. Yeah. So I have, as you mentioned there, so I've updated a copy of my book, The Lights Upon the Hills. Yeah. So yeah, I've spent maybe last year or so just updating it. I felt, put a bit of context. It was first written during COVID when I was still working. I may remember I was a police officer, so I worked through COVID, like a lot of police officers did, emergency services did, and I was pleased with what came out of Flying Disc Press with Philip Mantle. Absolutely fantastic organisation, and I'm still very much in touch with Philip. But I felt as though I could do more with the book once I had a bit more time. So I retired from the police about 2 years ago, and just put my efforts really into putting a few things right, getting some more information, new witnesses. My own experiences whilst I've been investigating Burton Dassett Hills, and I wanted to just put it into a new book. And the new book has got colour pictures in. It's twice the size as the original book. So I put a lot more into it, and I'm really pleased with the product.
I can't wait to get the copy, man. This is awesome. I've got the PDF, but it's nothing like the real hands-on deal, you know? And I always tell Philip, I love it, but I'm going to order the book anyway. So thank you very much.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's a good thing to kind of go over, though. But you did such amazing work in this one. So let's talk about it. Do you mind I know that your first episode, again, guys, linked down in the show description, episode 51, but it's linked down there. But do you mind just giving us a brief overview of the first one? And then we're going to get into some of the new stuff that you found.
Yeah, so the story originates, I suppose, is when I first moved up to the area from London into Warwickshire in England. And I came up in 2002, got a few local history books, a ghost book. And within the ghost book, there was one chapter which really caught my attention, and it was called The Lights on the Hills, or The Lights on Burton Dassett Hills. And it was written by a local historian who put it in the same context that it was reported at the time in 1922, 1923, that were ghost lights were seen moving around this hilly area, and there's a church and there's a vicarage and there's a small wooded area. And you can completely understand why it was put in with ghosts, and it was reported as ghosts at the time. But I just felt that looking through it through the prism of what we know now about UAPs and UFOs. To me, it felt like, just from those 3 or 4 pages, but it felt like a really important mass UFO event. So I carried the idea of researching it in more detail around with me for about 20 years until I eventually had that time to start to dig in a bit deeper. And what I found only confirmed that, really. So I got some press reports from the time. And what was being described was people were going up onto the hills and seeing these lights moving around at different speeds, different elevations, different heights, different altitudes, different colors, and coming back. And the stories are beginning to grow in the local area, so much so that the local papers first sent reporters up to see them. And then the national papers, so the Birmingham Times, the London Times, all sent reporters from around the country up to see these lights. Now, in 1922-23, spiritualism was having a bit of a renaissance. It was brought over to the UK originally by the Fox sisters, I think, about 1869, following the American Civil War, which is where spiritualism first appeared, sort of thing. And then it'd fallen out of favor, but following the First World War, spiritualism had this huge surge of interest again, because people wanted to believe that they would see their sons that had been killed in the war. So if there was any reports of lights anywhere, people would spend their Sunday afternoons or their evenings going up into these sort of places looking for these lights. One, it was really interesting, it was something to do, but on a deeper level, it could corroborate people's beliefs that spirits were real, the afterlife was real, and then there'd be a hope that they'd see their sons that had been killed in the war again.
All playing on emotion, which is why the spiritualist movement was so successful. They have powers that you don't, and then they find and exploit the weaknesses, or the vulnerabilities rather, in you than just an emotional human. And then it's a very successful model. But it's fascinating when people go out. So are there any reports of it being more than just lights upon the hills when people were out there for so much?
Yeah, so the predominantly it's lights, and these are generally all described the same as well. So again, if people were fabricating it or wanted the attention, then you'd expect them to have different reports. But they all seem to corroborate each other in as much as they're relatively small lights, about the size of a car headlamp. They're traveling at speed. They look to be searching for things. They're different colors, but predominantly white, but also blues and reds. There was one report that I found where a crowd was watching these lights, and I have no doubt that hundreds and hundreds of people saw these lights, rather than just the ones that made the paper reports, or the ones that were captured by local sort of storytelling. I'm sure hundreds of people saw them, and one person described seeing what they thought was figures in a light, because along with these predominantly round headlamp type size objects, there's more or less 2, perhaps 3 reports of a bright orange orb, which is significantly bigger, and that was seen. Firstly, it was seen by a reporter who went out from the Birmingham Times, I believe, went up onto the hills to try and see these lights, and didn't see anything, was a bit dejected, was heading back down, but thought would take in the view at the highest hill. And he describes in his report of the paper how he saw an orange orb come through the cloud base and illuminate the bottom of the cloud base before moving off at speed. And that is a fantastic report. He's got other people with him. He's made it into the paper. And then that similar thing, this orange orb, was seen by a railway signalman, who we now know his name was called. He was called Mr. W. Corbett, and he was a signalman, very responsible job back in them days. And he put his career and his livelihood on the line. And he reported that an orange orb landed, effectively came from over the hills and landed in front of his signal box. And he was so freaked out by it, he rang the local railway station. They told him to ring the police. And the report actually details that he got one of the giant metal spanners that used to use for turning the signals back in the days. And he went out to face this thing. Fortunately for him, and maybe the orange object, it flew off, and he reported it flying off back towards the hills. So, yeah, there is these reports of what have been seen, but generally they fall into these two brackets: these small lights moving fast, moving high, and this orange orb that was seen on a couple of occasions.
It's fascinating. I mean, all of this is so interesting. And then the way you describe that this orange orb lowers beneath the cloud level, illuminating it from below. We all picture, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't live in the UK. I haven't been there yet, but I just picture it gray and gloomy kind of all the time. And so I just picture this bright orange thing lighting up this real dreary background with these bright green hills and people just losing their shit over it. I just think it's a beautiful picture.
You can. And it was February, so February, very dark in January, February, very dark in England, in Warwickshire particularly. Yeah. And what's unusual about this area, I think, why it does stand out, is Warwickshire is right in the heart of England. It's more or less in the middle of England, and it's rolling countryside. I sort of describe it when I've talked before. It's a bit like Middle Earth from Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. The Shire, this sort of green, small hills, very pastoral. But then Burton Dassett Hills. These hills they're not that high. They'd be foothills in parts of America, no doubt. But for this area, they're very prominent. So they go up to about 262 feet. They're very prominent. And there's five of them. Five of them create this sort of, it's only maybe a mile by a mile square. But it's so unique, the area. You can see it for miles because it just looms out of this sort of countryside, really.
Are we sure they're just hills and not burial mounds of some kind, or archaeological?
Yeah, so that's a really good point. Someone else mentioned that before about could they be artificial?
Yeah,
they aren't. I mean, we know what's under them, which is iron ore, and it's had a lot of attention in the area because of the iron ore. So we know in Dark Ages times, Saxon times, within the area, there was lots of scoops out the ground, which are basically open iron ore mines. And even as late as the early 20th century for the First World War, train lines would go up onto Burton Dassett Hills, and they'd mine the iron ore there to help the war effort. But the iron ore does have a number of interesting factors around it. One of the explanations that's been put forward is perhaps earth lights, a bit like the Hasseldalen lights in Norway.
Yeah, like ball lightning or something.
The ball lightning, etc. I personally don't think that is them, but there is a good case for that because the lights are similar in some ways. Just after these events, and when the event sort of started and stopped, started December, stopped more or less end of February. There was nothing else really similar was seen for since. But there was an earthquake in Warwickshire, which does happen. I've been here for an earthquake in 2002, and that again would suggest that perhaps the ground was moving, was summoning this up, and the lights were responsible for them. And we also have a place called the Rollright Stones, which is an ancient monument, goes back to the times of Stonehenge, about 250 BC.
Wow.
2500 BC, sorry. And that there is blue earth lights reported being seen there fairly regularly. And that is only maybe 10, 15 miles away from Burton Dassett Hills. But the reason I don't think they are earth lights is because the lights they're describing, and I can give some examples later on, show intelligent control. Now that's either because they're probes and they're under intelligent command, or this phrase which I think was coined by Paul Sinclair, this intelligent light forms. And increasingly I'm beginning to think that's what these are, because there is a degree of intelligence there, whereas the earth lights tend to be quite short in duration and don't really have any pattern to them, whereas the lights that were seen in Burton Dassett in 1923 were seen moving around. They illuminated a house, they played hide and seek with some of the witnesses, etc. So to me that shows a degree of intelligence.
Yeah, we'll leave ball lightning on there, but we're going to throw it in the pile in the back because it's not as fun, and we're going to talk about the fun shit. It's on the pile, guys. If you just want to you want to die on that hill, then go ahead and do it. But we're going to continue on to some cooler hills too. Fascinating. So I'm curious about crop circles in the area related to the phenomena. There's this amazing video that our mutual publishing friend here, Mark Ollie, talks about in Ancient Alien Season 19. Shout out, Mark. Congratulations, buddy. And he's talking about this video that we showed on his episode on here of the orbs or the balls that sort of under intelligent control. It seems like they're in the same family or maybe the same vehicle or whatever, just somewhere else, that are forming these crop circles as they're flying above them. And so are there any crop circles reported in the area or a history of any of that?
So crop circles generally in the UK, they form most of I think 80% of them form within 4 or 5 miles of Stonehenge. Stonehenge is about a 40-mile, as the crow flies, direction from Burton Dassett. It's not very far at all. Wiltshire sort of area. I've seen that footage. I think you're talking about where the ball lightning appears and it's fantastic, amazing piece of footage.
Awesome.
Yes, it could be similar. I mean, I did an article for Chris Evers's brilliant magazine, the Outer Limits magazine, and about crop circles, and we went down for a day with my son and went to Avebury and went to Stonehenge, and there was a crop circle that was appeared, and I talked to a very interesting Swiss guy who had followed the crop circles all the way around the world, and he used to come over from Switzerland regularly just to go to Avebury to see them. And he had a really interesting view, which was he thought around 80% of them were man-made, and some of them were even made by big companies trying to get on the bandwagon. But that 20% that he couldn't be explained, he's absolutely convinced are from another civilization, another life force, if you like. And he would talk about how you could tell between how the reeds were bent over and the burning and the energy. But what you can't deny, even my son, who was fairly cynical about the whole thing, but it was a day out with his dad, when you walk into a crop circle, everything changes. There is a similar feeling as if you're walking into a church or a ancient place. There is a definite change in atmosphere when you go into it, and that can't be explained at all. So it is quite close to where crop circles are. There is no crop circles that have been discovered around the area of Burton Dassett, and I say that they're more or less contained. I would say particularly the genuine ones are more or less contained within 2 to 3 miles of Stonehenge.
Wow. That's interesting, man. But it's still really close. And we spoke last time about this being on a ley line section where these power grids sort of intersect. Were you able to discover any of that more on that?
Yeah. So so you need the 3 points for the ley line, and between all of them, there is nothing really north that would draw a straight line between the three. It depends. I mean, it depends how far you want it to stretch it.
Right.
I think more Burton Dassett is more like one of these unique areas, like Rendlesham Forest, where we all know about the Rendlesham sightings, but that's the tip of the iceberg, really. Brenda Butler will, no doubt you've spoken to her, will tell you all about it. Where you've got connection with dogmen and spirits, and not just UFOs and extraterrestrials, etc. Or in the US, Skinwalker Ranch, somewhere like that. I think Burton Dassett fits into that category because, yes, I'm talking about at the moment the UFO sightings, but there is other things that go on. What the church is telling us, the fact that there's a military base there, the fact that the Knights Templars were drawn to that area. There was a good body of evidence to suggest they left treasure there. So I wouldn't say it's particularly on a ley line. I think it's an anomaly within itself, rather than linking up with other sort of areas.
Yeah, and it's interesting to discover the old history of this place. Go back to when it was maybe a totally different temple on top of where now the church stands. Because usually if it's this important and this has been going on, it's probably been going on for a while, and there's probably another temple or something built there, which is going to lead me to my question about underground stuff going on there. Please. Yeah, no, well, you've hit the nail on the head, because through my new research, so the Church of All Saints Church, which has these unusual carvings and pictures, which I detail in the book, I've since found out that that's probably on the site of a Roman temple, and actually just outside the church there is a holy well, which was a Roman a Roman place of worship, going back to what must have been, 300 AD. So you're dead right. The church has been built on what's probably a Roman area. And actually, the other thing I found out was what we now know as Windmill Hill, which is the tallest hill within Burton Dassett Hills, was known as the Phoenix Hill in Roman times. And there is reports of red, and it got that name, I think, because red lights were seen around it. So that goes back to Roman times. So yeah, the depth of history is huge. And then you've got the Roman times, and then I believe that the pictures, the artwork in the church is depicting something from the 9th century AD. The pictures themselves were painted in the 14th century. Then you've got, the sightings in the early 20th century, which to us is a long time. But to whatever these beings, these lights, this civilization is that's visiting with these craft, probably isn't. It could be the same as walking into a room and then walking out of a room and walking back in again a few minutes later. We just can't comprehend it. Yeah, maybe they're just passing through from one dimension to another, and it is a being or some source of energy that, would be described as a being in some reality that we can't even begin to comprehend and understand. Yeah. And that's what's passing through here. Sort of like you said, the light form beings. That's interesting, because then it does denote more of an intelligence, but also there's a playfulness to it, because then that's what makes it intelligent, you think. Because it doesn't seem, like you said, necessarily malicious, but it will kind of chase people around a little bit and kind of play around a little. So do you have any stories of that, about how it's interacted with folks directly? Yeah, so in the first book, I did mention she was only known as the maid, and she was a maid at the vicarage, and late on in 1922, I think, one of the first sightings, she saw this light that she was saying was going hither and thither, undulating over the hills, and looked like it was following her to the vicarage. And that account is in the first book, but I've since found out that where that story came from. So it was collected local knowledge by that maid's great granddaughter, who told her about this interaction she had with this light in 1922. And although we didn't get the name of the maid, we got the details of her granddaughter, and we got more details about that. And what she actually said was she saw the light on a number of occasions and always thought it was friendly, never thought it was malicious. It would follow her along the road down to the vicarage where she would start work. And then she'd got into a habit, the maid, of poking her head out to see if the light was there. And the light would appear when she looked out. And then she would go back in, and she presumed the light disappeared. And then she'd poke back out again, and the light would have reappeared. So there was a sort of connection there. There was some sort of I say playfulness around it, which is a fantastic account. And we got more details about that. I'm curious, because you mentioned in the pre-show thing that you sent me here, which I'm grateful for, by the way, that there's witchcraft in the area. So do you think maybe that this is just an area of powerful people, that maybe there's something in the water or the grounds that brings out a natural ability in the human beings that occupy the area to either manifest these things, call them forth, be a magnet for them, or like her, whenever you talk about that she pops her head out, saw it denotes a playfulness, but from an observer perspective, it's you playing with you. So maybe it's a way of sort of waking up or validating that you have some special gifts or something, because you're able to see something most people aren't, or only see from a distance, as well as you have it sort of, you're playing with it. You're playing fetch with the thing. You're kind of forming a relationship in a way. But do you think that that's coming from the individual, which again may or may not have to do with the area? Maybe there's like something in the water and there's a bunch of witches and stuff running around there, or that area can unlock powers or something like that. I'm just curious if you've thought of that.
Yeah, no, I'd not really thought of it, but now you've mentioned it, I think it's probably to do with the area, to go back to my earlier theory, if you like, because, like I said, probably hundreds of people had sightings with these lights, 1922, 1923. They only the sort of top 5% or 10% or something actually survived through history or made it into a newspaper report.
Yeah, of the ones that reported it, that actually
had
an
so
encounter.
The ones that reported it, and say these reports were going around and people were going up to see them, and it was for 2 months it became the thing to do on a Sunday afternoon or Wednesday evening.
Sure.
So I do think it's the place. I do think it's possibly something to do with the iron ore that's underneath it. I think, and I do include this in the book, it's something to do as well with the geometry of the place. So it's set up with 3 hills at the front and 2 hills at the back, but the 3 hills at the front are very much in that Orion belt, Giza pyramid, type of positions, where 2 are in a line and 1 slightly off kilter, off that diagonal line. And if you see it, which like I have in February, you walk up it and you can see Orion, the constellation Orion, as if he is walking up the hills, and the belt is directly above it, and you've got these 2 hills and then 1 slightly offset directly below the 3 stars of Orion's belt, which are 2 stars together and 1 slightly offset. Now, you can go further because you probably know in some cultures, Orion is actually looked at as a hand, the upside down hand with 2 stars being the wrist. With the belt being a wrist and then fingers coming down. And because we've got these 2 hands behind, 2 stars behind us, Betelgeuse, and you have to forgive me what the other one is, but it almost mirrors the Orion constellation from certain sort of angles. And now I've had a bit of stick about that theory, but I don't mind. I put the theory out there. People can read the book, read the information I've got, and then they can decide if there's something in it or not. But I just think if it was just on its own, it's one of these amazing coincidences about Burton Dassett, where you have a hill formation that matches Orion constellation. All 5 in some way, all 5 hills match it almost identically. And the sightings were seen predominantly in February, which is when January, which is when Orion's highest in the sky. So could be coincidence, but when you put everything else together with it's just another, tick in the box really of some sort of high strangeness in that area.
I think you're really onto something here, especially with the alignment now to Orion. I think that's fascinating, especially with the time he appears to be aligned with the physical location that mimics his alignment, to be in the same window of time in which the phenomena occurs. I mean, I think this is a very interesting thread you're pulling on here, detective. That's what you are. That's amazing.
Yeah, it could be my detective brain making connections, but
that's what's needed.
And then you mentioned the witchcraft. So the witchcraft's very interesting as well. So that came about because I do give tours around the area. People can email me and I'll meet them there and give them a walk around.
That is totally cool, guys. Email in. We're going to do one of these over there with you, Richard.
Yeah, please come over. And I took 2 other authors actually. Meet up on a Sunday afternoon. You have a walk walk around. But we went into Fox Covert Wood, which is at the bottom of the rear hill, Church Hill. And it's only a small wood. There's a path around it. It's quite cultivated in some ways, but there is a clearing in the bottom right-hand corner, which I had been into before. It's a natural clearing with trees still in there. And I actually wild camped there on occasion. But this time when we walked in, as we walked up to that part of the wood, there was a huge pentagram in white spray on a tree facing you as you came up to it. And that must have only appeared within 2 or 3 months since I was last there. Well, certainly wasn't there before, and then it appeared. And this was over the early summer months. And it was in a circle. And then on the floor, there was a white dotted line, and then there was a solid line that was either side of a route, which was, clearly indicating an entry and an exit point to me. So we went through the exit bit, and then you're met in the center of this sort of natural clearing with another pentagram in a circle. And I was quite happy with the pentagram in as much as it was in the Wiccan pagan manner, so with the star at the top, like that, rather than the 2 stars at either side, which I'm sure you'll know, but people might not know it. That's the satanic side that symbolizes a goat and the devil, etc. So I was quite happy we weren't entering into satanic place of worship, but it was certainly a Wicca or a pagan place of worship. And then as you go through further, there was another tree which had strange symbols on it, a triangle, a sort of hourglass shape. And then round the outside of the trees, they were marked with letters and symbols or numbers and letters. So you get D4, D1, 3, 2F, these sort of things going around the outside. And then there was other small man-made structures made out of branches, which you could maybe fit 2 people in. And there was evidence there of flames, etc., or fires that had been built there. So we had to look around the area. Actually, it was quite tidy, there wasn't rubbish laying around, crisp packets, cans of drink, etc. It all been tidied out, so it'd been well respected. So we had a look around. I took some photographs, which I've included in the book because I figured I'd be writing about it. So took that back with me. So I looked into a bit more research in the area about witchcraft and found that there'd been 2 satanic, and the word described as satanic murders in the local villages around Burton Dassett. So Burton Dassett's in the middle. You've got these 5 hills and a wood and a church. One end, you've got a village called North End, and at the other one, you've got a village called Fenny Compton. And there was a case in North End where in the early 1940s, mild-mannered man, no trouble with the police, very well respected, for some reason, went out in the street and stabbed another woman with a pitchfork and killed her.
Damn.
They put it at the time down to sort of being mentally deranged, but killing with a pitchfork, which is a 2-pronged fork used for hair, etc., was known as a way of dealing with witches in medieval Britain. So it felt like, although it wasn't treated that way, but it did feel like a satanic murder. And then the second one, which I found out through my
This holiday season, you might be looking for nutritious, convenient meals to keep you energized on jam-packed days. Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal delivery service, can help you fuel up for brekkie, lunch, or dinner with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved, ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. They just drop them at your door, people. You'll save time and eat well. You'll stay on track with your healthy lifestyle while taking all of your holiday to-dos in stride with good meals in the tum-tum. If you're too busy with all this stuff, these meals are easy to get done. They taste great. All you've got to do is head over to factormeals.com/expandingreality50 and use code expandingreality50 to get 50% off. That's code expandingreality50 at factormeals.com/expandingreality50 to get 50% off.
Research was the murder of a policeman who was on duty outside the pub at Fenny Compton in, I think it was something like 1888 or 1889, so late 19th century. Disappeared from his beats, couldn't be found, but was found 2 weeks later in nearby Oxford Canal, dead, and he had been killed with a pitchfork. Again, so I'll give more details of the book. So that was the context of witchcraft within the Burton Dassett area, which I thought was really interesting. But I was still left with this pagan site. So I thought I'll ask a witch. So I managed to find one. If you go to Glastonbury in England, you know, you can't throw a stone without hitting
dime
a witch.
a dozen, huh?
Yeah, dime a dozen.
When we say dime a dozen, what would you guys say? Penny a dozen or pence a dozen? I'm
Pound
not being
pinch of
ignorant.
shit? I don't know.
Wait, what is it? No, go ahead.
I don't know. To a penny, you'd say.
To a penny. Okay.
To a penny, yeah.
To a penny.
To a penny.
Okay,
So
witches are to a penny in Glastonbury there.
yeah, witches are to in
Glasgow.
Okay. So this is Glastonbury. So Glastonbury Tor and where the music festival is, and there was a witch that was working in a shop, and I just asked her and showed her some pictures, and she gave me a view, and she was really, really interesting. I don't want to dive into too much here, but the upshot of it was that she felt the one thing she explained what the symbols meant, which she thought mainly meant welcome, and the figures were representatives of perhaps past members that had moved on, past members of the coven that had moved on, or people that couldn't be there. But what she was annoyed at was the fact that the markings had been spray painted on, and really you should use ash. So the whole pagan Wiccan ethos is about nature and not damaging nature, etc. Sure. So she was really annoyed that they just used like spray paint. So she felt it was well-meaning, but ultimately amateur people that had done this.
Yeah, they need a good druid. I'm sure they're a penny for two over there as well. You know.
Yeah, druids are to a penny around Avebury and Stonehenge.
Yeah, teach them how to do it.
You get them all together and see what happens.
Yeah, it's like the shamans out there. I think it's so cool. I just picture, we got to get a good druid to come hang out with us and walk around when we come do this. It does sound like something wild in the area, though, that it has such an incredible history, and then especially odd behavior. We've got Wiccan rituals and everything now. Now I'm curious if you've dove into the mythology of the area pre-Roman settlement. Was there anything going on, like some fae sort of mythology around there? Anything that you could locate?
Well, the whole of Warwickshire is well known as a truly ancient place. So but it would have been wooded up until more or less the Romans came. So you would have your normal stories that were frequent pre-Roman times. So generally people lived to the coast. They kept out of the woods because they were terrifying. There's things that eat you in there.
Yeah.
So there wouldn't have been much to do. I mean, it would have been prominent, but it still probably would have been covered in woods. But the what is interesting, I think, is the church. And just going back a step, so I meant to mention that the Wicca area, the Wicca site, was exactly mirror image to where the church is on the site. So you've got the church, and I'll come back to this in the Green Man in a minute, but you've got the church on one side, the other side of the hill, as if in a mirror image in the wood, almost matched up. If they're on a map, you'd bend them over and they'd more or less touch, was the Wicca site. So it had been placed there, I think, deliberately to show a mirror image of the Christian church.
Yeah, as a balance, almost as balancing the energies in the place.
Perhaps they would say as a balance, yeah.
Yeah.
But within the church, there is a green man symbol, which is which is quite rare within churches.
Yeah.
And the green man symbol is an ancient British symbol, again adopted by the Romans, but it was adopted by Christianity to signify the joining together of two worlds, and in churches that's generally thought to have meant the joining together of paganism and Christianity. But yeah, the church does feature these amazing carvings, one of which is the Green Man carving.
It's beautiful, and I can't wait to, like I said, get a copy of the new one with the color images in it. Guys, linked below. Check it out. It's a fun story either way. I'd get both copies just so you can have it for reference. Are you going to keep the first one in print?
No, so the first one was with Flying Disc. I've moved over and I am a bit of a lone wolf.
Congratulations, man! Get out on your own. That's awesome.
Yeah. So and there was an absolute, Philip Mantle was very encouraging about it. But I hope to write a few more books and do it under my own sort of steam, really. And the quality you get from the Amazon stuff, and it sounds like a plug, but the quality that they come out with now is fantastic.
That's what I'm publishing these through. I hear you. Yeah, it's just easy. Not easy, actually, but it's pretty decent quality. I agree with that. Well, congratulations. And I misspoke at the beginning, assuming you were still with him, because I got the message from Philip to have you back on. So that's amazing. But I just think it's all awesome.
We're still, he's
the love.
He is, yeah.
That's the love. I love Philip like that.
Well, it's a credit to him, really, yeah.
Well, it is a credit to him because also your growth, he empowered you enough from going to writing this book to going, you know what, I can do it on my own. And he encourages this. And then not only that, he wants to make sure that we know about the new book that you self-published to have you on for that he's not making anything. I just love you,
and
Philip
he managed to fit in writing his own great books as well. Yeah, he's a proper gent.
All right. Well, shout out Philip Mantle. Well done, buddy. But congratulations, man, on striking out on your own. That's a beautiful thing. So what about underground structures under there? I know that when we talk about crazy light phenomena, we also want to ask about piezoelectricity type phenomena, maybe some water, some aquifers and things like that. I know you'd mentioned a well, but what is down there? Is there a cave system down there? Have we gone below the ore?
Yeah, no. So there's no record or any way of finding that out without digging it up. Somebody did mention, because Magpie Hill is so distinctively triangular, they suggested, well, could that be man-made? Could that be a pyramid underneath it? There's certainly nothing to suggest it. Again, to burrow down into it would be a huge challenge. The underwater element is an interesting one. So that the well rises just outside the church, and the church is in a funny place, but it's not on top of the hills. It's sort of in a natural plateau halfway up. So that would suggest that the water is coming down from somewhere or coming up from somewhere. So there may be caverns, etc., connected with that, but it's too deep to dig. It's too deep for LiDAR or anything like that. So I think it is a natural place, Burton Dassett Hills, but whether it, because of its chemical, its geological makeup, it sucks energy in, or even displaces it out. Something like that is happening to it to cause the interest. It's pulled in humans for centuries, perhaps 1,000 years, and then it appeared to, for whatever reason, perhaps the same reason we find it interesting, it seemed to pull in these craft creatures, whatever they happen to be, at the turn of the 20th century.
So interesting. It's just one of these things, man. It just makes you smile. It's just cool to know that wicked, awesome places like this exist. And it would be a great thing if you could, let's say, just phase through matter and iron ore was not a problem. Then what you're describing as far as our challenges to get under there would be the perfect place for something to be there, for something hiding that could, again, not be bound by the laws of physics as we kind of see this stuff doing. Yet still it seems intelligent, which is fascinating. So I'm curious about your thoughts on UFOs and UAPs in general. Like, what is a more solid looking craft? Have you seen any? And then also, I'm dying to know about your Men in Black. So please answer that however you'd like, man.
Yeah. Okay. So I wouldn't say I'd seen a UFO. I think the closest experience I had was in Burton Dassett Hills. So what happened then was that we went out with a friend of mine. We used to do nighttime observations. We did a bit of wild camping, do a lot of walking around the area. And one night in February 2020, there was a gap in a storm I think it was Storm Brenda or something, was coming over the UK. Not a proper storm like you get, but, a storm for the UK's UK measure. And we managed to get a bit of a gap in it. So we walked up onto the hills, decided we'd do a bit of observations, looking out over the hills and over the back. And for whatever reason, despite the cold, I sort of fell asleep for 20 minutes or so, but then was woken up by this sound, which was like an engine rotating, vroom, 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 vroom. But it was getting louder and louder, and it seemed to come from everywhere all at once around where I was underneath the poncho.
Damn.
And I looked up, there was no lights, there was no real change of atmosphere, atmospherics or static or anything like that. But this noise that seemed impossible for a machine that we would know that could recreate. It just got faster and faster and faster. It went on for about 5 minutes and got louder and louder and louder, and then it just suddenly stopped if it'd been switched off.
Wow.
And I just thought that was an incredible thing, and I had to pinch myself as that just happened, and it had. And I made some notes, checked my watch, make sure I didn't have any missing time or anything. But a couple of months later, I was doing general research about UFOs, and I came across an account which I think was from around about 1988, and it was a South African farmer and his friends, and they're describing seeing a craft in South Africa, what they described as like a mother craft with lots of other craft following it, that went over the top of them, and it had the sound, and this is how he described it, like a VW Beetle, a rotary engine. So I don't know if you know how much you know about VW Beetles, but VW Beetles have their engines on their sides.
Yeah.
So they make this vroom, 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 vroom noise. And when I read that, I thought, that's it. That's what I heard. It was like that VW Beetle, but on a huge, massive scale, obviously.
Right.
And that was good because it felt as though it was like corroboration. I didn't imagine it. Someone else had said something very, very similar.
Now I'm just curious to see if one of your neighbors, took their old VW Bug, figured out a way to, maybe flip it on the other side, and it's backfiring down the Warwickshire as it's flying around somehow.
I mean, they'd have to be going some space, because it was like being in the middle of it, and it was everywhere. Because people put forward, well, is it farm machinery? Was it something from the barracks across, MOD Kyneton? But it was nothing that could be created by anything that was man-made, because it was everywhere. It was all encompassing, this sort of noise. So I think that's the closest I've come to my own experience. And then the own sort of, it wasn't a sighting, it was like an audible encounter, I suppose.
Yeah.
And then, yes, so my view on UFOs has changed, I think, increasingly, in as much as I was very much in the nuts and bolts camp and believe that the only way you would change people's view of UFOs would be to have a craft stripped down in front of them and say, look, well, we can't explain any of this. That has changed, I think, partly because the Tic Tac videos, because actually those Tic Tac videos and the sightings from the Navy, etc., have gone a long way. I think that the debate has changed in as much as it's not, do UFO exist? I think if you speak to 80% of people now, they will say, well, yes, UFO exists. It's now on to the big question, which everyone has always struggled with. What are they?
Is it?
And what do they want?
Yeah.
So I've moved away from those, and I increasingly think perhaps they are interdimensional. I think perhaps I heard a good term the other day, which was ultra-terrestrial. So the idea that there's a breakout civilization somewhere still on the planet that are just years and years and years ahead of us. So perhaps they're ultra-terrestrial, these crafts that are coming around. But also the multi-dimensional angle as well. Increasingly, intelligent life forms have become very interesting. And I tell a story in the book. I don't want to give too much away, but I tell a story in the book by a commercial pilot who was on a cargo run between Southampton and Hamburg, I believe it was, and him and his co-pilot saw something very similar to the lights that were seen in 1922, 23, two green lights heading towards them. Initially, the initial thought was, well, that's another plane and it's the green light from a wing, but they worked out it was on the wrong side. So if it was a plane, it was flying backwards. So they thought, well, it's not that. It must be something else. So these two lights came at speed towards them, and he describes as green fuzzy lights. And one he saw go over the top of him, and one went underneath. And he's pretty happy that the one that went over the top did go over the top. He saw out the side window. But he goes on to tell a fantastic story about his interactions with that second green light, which I detail in the book, and I don't want to give any more away than that.
You don't have to. I like I like the teasers. That's fine. We'll take it. You're giving us so much gold here, brother. You can have that teaser. That's fine. I love it. And again, guys, link down below. His first self-published book. Please get it. Okay, so now you mentioned a Men in Black encounter. Or was it an alien? Like, what's going on, man? That sounds creepy as shit.
That one, that was, so again, it was me, same friend, went up on the hills after a day's walking. We spent some time on Burton Dassett Hill because something always happens there, it appears. And on this occasion, it was really strange in as much as it was probably about November time. It would have been about November time. Dark, about 8 o'clock at night. Nobody else in the park because the weather's too bad. We parked up, no one around. We in my camper van, parked up, really, really cold, quite wet, quite miserable. But I thought, come on, we'll have a walk around and just see what we can see. So we parked up the far corner at Beacon Hill, and you walk along quite a road and a path towards Windmill Hill, which is the main hill, and then you do a left, which takes you out towards the woods, which is where we were going to sort of head. As we were walking down this road, and it is a proper tarmac road, there was it was a American style Chevy, and I only know this from research after, but a Chevrolet van, again, this is research after, like the A-Team's van. So it had rounded edges. That's how I described it. It was like a small British Transit van, but it had rounded edges. So
it was like a Chevy Astro.
Something like that. It was
I'm
like a
pull
Chevy.
One up for the audience who's watching the.
It was like a Chevy
here,
van.
Because to picture a Men in Black, a scary Men in Black get out of a Chevy Astro is hilarious. You guys check the show notes for the video version.
They went in there, but this van was just left. It was in a road, so it was a road you drive down, but it was just left there. So we nearly walked into it because it's dark at night, etc. It had no number plates on it, no lights on it.
This mean machine right here?
Right, so you see the one that's going for, which is a bit of a bargain, to be honest, $220.
Yeah, man, that's not bad. And it's souped up as well. This little thing?
So it looked like that with a similar sort of color.
Oh, it was souped up. They had a souped up Chevy Astro.
That's what it was. Yeah, the Astro, but it was a beige. The bottom half of it was a brown like that, but the top half was a beige.
Oh,
was a beige.
Shit. That's
we
extra,
could tell
man.
this, but we eventually got our camera phones out and used the light there, but. And it had markings on the side. It was a bit rounder than that, so maybe that was 95, 2004. So maybe it
like
was
an older model, like 80s. Because you go 80s, you get like a rounded one like this, and I don't know if they were souping these bad boys up. What about this thing right here? This guy looks. Oh well, now we're just shopping for Astro. No, great. My search history is going to be so dumb for a few weeks. Thanks a lot, Richard. Anyway, go ahead, please, sir.
Yeah. So I enjoyed that. I enjoyed looking at them, but it was just randomly parked across the road, and I mean, so we nearly bumped into it. It wasn't really doing anything, but it was just really strange to be there. So we walked around it. There was nobody we could see. Windows are tinted out, of course. There's nobody we could see in it, but we basically walked around it. Well, it is a bit of a strange place. Not sure what's going on, but there we are. So we carried on walking. But as we walked up, we walked on the top of the hills, did a few observations for about 5-10 minutes, but the weather was that bad. We thought, right, we're gonna head back down. So as we came back down, me and my friend, we saw a purple light. It was like a purple laser. So it was a very bright, intense, small light, but it had sort of, you could see the distortion of the light around it. So it looked like a laser, very, very bright. And as we walked down the hill, we could see that this light was over in the back of a car park. As we got closer, we could see the light was coming out of this van that we saw earlier, as if something was placed in the back of it, and it was shining through the front windscreen. And we thought, well, that's strange. I can now see that there's a figure in the driving seat at least. And this light, this purple laser, seems to be pointing out the front up into the sky. So I think, well, we're going to have to go over and just see what's going on, aren't we? Because that is strange. As we walk down go into the road, some lights come on behind us. Turn around, and it's a big black British style Range Rover, and the lights have come onto it. We can see two figures in the car. And as we go to walk towards this van with the purple light in it, it starts driving towards us. And so I stop, and I say to my friend, what do you think about this? He doesn't look too happy. Now, I do say, and I've written about it in more detail in the book, I do say in the book, if this was Stranger Things or X-Files, then of course you just go anywhere, wouldn't you? But this is real life, and there is two people following us in a car, and we're opposite a military base. And from my experience, these look like military type guys in a big spanking brand new Range Rover Sport. You know, they're not to be messed with, was my view. So we turned around and moved away from the purple light and walked past the Range Rover, people in it, all blacked out windows. Its lights still on. It let us walk past, and then as we walked back up the road, it turned round and then sat behind us again with the lights on. And when we got to the junction, we turned right to go back to our vehicle, and it drove up to the edge of the junction and just sat there. And we walked back to the camper van, and we were like, what was all that about? You know, that just didn't seem right. So we got in the van and drove off the hills. It was about 9 o'clock, 9:30 by now. And it wasn't there. We couldn't really see the van again. But if I was to push it to extreme, that looked to me like a US British military operation, for want of a better word. And the purple light was some sort of tracker, some sort of laser, some sort of measuring instrument. I don't know, but it was really, really strange, really strange.
Well, the only issue I've really got with the story is that you guys got the super dope black Range Rover, and we got this shitty little Astra 1987. I found the one. Here it is. Two-tone right here. It's got rims. They're pretty proud of that is white
very
walls.
Good. Yeah, that's very good as to what it was. The colours were perhaps a bit reversed, but it was darker on the bottom. But yeah, that's more or less what it was like.
Merca. Okay. Well, great. And this was recent.
This was November 2022.
Yeah.
So about a year ago.
A little after this was in stock here. Okay, well that's fine. I just wanted to make sure. So the U.S. is allegedly using 1987 Astro vans, 4.0 liter V6 actually, 152 horsepower there, guys. So they're going for quite a deal. I don't know. Maybe there'll be a resurgence in it in stocking vehicles.
You know how common are they in the UK to a penny, or you know?
Are they that common over there?
They're not. They're very, very rare.
I was about to say, I would think they'd be pretty rare, not like bugs in Cuba or something. I mean, they're pretty rare.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Quite wild, my friend. But it puts a new light on it. I think it's silly. You know, I wouldn't be able to take it seriously. I'd just be like, in that? Really? Come on, man. It's just funny.
I mean, yeah, I suppose if I was making it up, I'd come up with a big Humvee or a big.
Well, it's even weirder.
But that's what we saw. That is what we saw. So, yeah, it was really strange.
Yeah, I don't know. Nothing's off the table, I suppose. Well, my friend, before we let you go here, I wanted to make sure that you and I had touched on something that you'd mentioned that I think is wonderful. Before we get into that, though, again, guys, all the ways to find him, his amazing work, and your email actually is what you've requested that I'll link, so I will do so down there. Contact him directly. Obviously, a very sweet man. And we're going to do this many more times because you've got a lot more in you, buddy. And we're going to come hang out with you over there. So again, guys, email me if y'all want to go do that. We'll get a party together. this being the Century Edition, man, this is so cool. So are you going to go out there and do anything for it? Because we're talking about, we're in the month 100 years ago of when this phenomena started, right in your backyard.
Yeah, so we're coming to the end of the year now. So it was December 1923. February 1923. So we've had that year round, which is why I've got this sort of centenary edition, because I wanted to see what happened that year. And I'd love to say a mothership came and landed and picked the church up, but it didn't.
Didn't make it in the book.
No,
so.
I have lots of contacts with the locals, and that final big happening didn't seem to be. But 100 years to us is nothing to whatever this intelligence is. And I had enough. I said the book is double the size, so I had enough new material. I felt it was worth justifying doing it now. But I will keep going back to that area. There's just something about it. Every time I go up there, I encounter witches. I hear stuff. I see people in various American trucks and vans. So it is just one of the places that wherever you go up, there's always a story, I suppose.
It sounds like either way you'd be successful with a pitchfork shop and an Astro van dealership. Maybe combine the two somehow.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, or a tire repair shop or something as well up there.
Also, one quick fun fact for the audience here that may not know. We mentioned green lights and airplanes, and why would that be significant if they could tell by a light on a plane which way it was going? And some people may not know this, so I'm going to drop this on you. Navigation position lights are on the ends of each wingtip of the big wings, not the ailerons, the small wings, the large wings of aircraft. And what happens is they put a green light always on the right side, a red light always on the left side. So you've got your port light, your starboard light, so that way you can tell which way it's coming or going, or if you're facing the side of it. Really, they're navigational lights for you, the ground observer, to be able to tell which way the aircraft is going. So, boom, pow, knowledge dropped on you. You learned something as well as the 1987 Astrovans are still a thing. Yeah. Okay, so my friend, you had written about men's mental well-being, and I'd like to talk about this because I briefly touched on a couple of episodes here. I recently am out on the other side of what I feel is the most challenging experience mentally that I've ever been through, and stepping into the other side of it, which I didn't think I was going to. A lot has changed for me, and it sounds like just kismet or serendipitously, if you want to say that, you'd also mentioned it in something that you'd like if we had time to mention, and so I'd like to make time for that, sir. So what are your thoughts on men's mental health, please? Yeah,
I just think it's important, really, I came out of the police after 28 years, 6 years in the military, wasn't in a great place for 6 months, caused by stress. I had 3 friends that committed suicide in the police because of their work. 2 police officer commit suicide in the UK once every fortnight. The statistics are frightening, but what I found was the fact that men can talk to each other. I'm very much of the opinion that we have a lot of these issues because we do bottle things up and we're scared to mention it and what our friends and peers might think. And it was only afterwards I thought I could have saved myself a lot of trouble and mental anguish by talking to somebody when I was in the job, I was in the police, getting stuff out there, because it all seemed to just reach a point. When I was no longer going to work, my brain was still moving. It was described to me like a roulette wheel. When they take the ball out, it still spins round. So I've since started to help police officers that come out that retire and struggle, or even officers that are still in the police that are going through traumatic times, either caused by events that they've been to or a build-up of events, or because they're under investigation for various things. And so I do like to take the opportunity when I can just to say, men out there, the suicide rates for young men is an absolute disgrace in this country. I'm sure it's the same in the US. And just try to say to men, but people in general, do talk, don't keep it bottled up. Mindfulness, we did our mindfulness exercise before we came on, didn't we, Brandon? And it can really, really help. and do seek help. Do seek help if you're feeling down. People get treated if they've got a broken leg, but and there's no shame in that. But yeah, if people's mind are breaking, then there seems to be a shame in that, even though it could be chemical, it could be build up of emotions. These are all, and the big thing I found out is how physical symptoms can be a result of stress. And you've got to tell people about it. You've got to reach out, speak to it, take one step at a time, ask for help if you need it. So yeah, I really appreciate that. I think there's more we can do to help men that are struggling with their mental health.
Well, you already held a very special place in my heart, my friend, and I really thank you for bringing that up. And I'm grateful that we got to touch on it here because, like you said, the more we shine some light on it, the more it's not taboo anymore. And
yes,
guys, like he said, his email is going to be linked below. Please reach out, expandingrealitypodcast.com at Gmail. podcast@gmail.com. You know how that works. Linked below as well. If anybody has anything to say on that, please reach out, guys. You're not alone, number one. Number two, it's not weird to talk about. It's actually weird if you don't talk about it, because then you get so many opportunities for all of us saying, hey, there's no shame in this. We've all been through the ringer. This is a fucked up place, and let's just be honest about it. And as long as we can be honest that this is a fucked up place, then we can move forward from there. So Richard Rokeby, I can't thank you enough, brother. This is incredible. All the ways to find you located down below, as well as your email for contact. My friend, did you have any parting words for us before we say goodbye?
No, I mean,
time?
just on that point, and I think you covered it very eloquently there. But people who they want to talk to about how their struggles is different for each person. It could be your best friend. It could be a complete stranger. Either is good. Whatever you feel more comfortable is, but just doing that process of talking about it, getting it out, can make the world of difference, and we'll try and bring down those suicide rates in young men is predominantly how where my concern comes from.
Beautiful. What gives you hope? Let's leave on a high note here. What keeps you getting out of bed every morning?
I think there is hope. I think more people talking about it is better. We have high profile people. David Beckham, the footballer, did an excellent podcast recently about his mental health and how he dealt with his struggles of mental health. Robbie Williams, who's a pop star, very much into his UFOs and ufology. He did something similar again with a Netflix documentary. So it's small steps, but it is becoming more accepted to say, buddy, I'm struggling. I just need to get some things off my chest. So that's great, and that's what we want.
Richard, we love you, dude. Thank you so much for this, man. You're outstanding. We look forward to everything. Thank you.
That's all right. I really enjoyed it, Brandon.
At Sleep Outfitters Outlet, great sleep is a big deal. Save 40 to 60% every day on every Sealy, Stearns & Foster, and Tempur-Pedic. Queens as low as $249. Customer exchanges, closeouts, and floor samples. Inventory changes daily, so come in for your dream deal today. With no credit needed financing, expert advice, and up to 60% off retail, it's never been easier to get the sleep and savings you deserve. Go to sleepoutfittersoutlet.com for financing details and to find a store near you.